Did you ever sit in front of the computer and you were literally wondering what's the best way to bid for your Google ad campaigns right now? I mean, it's super confusing. You have a lot of different bidding strategies, bidding options, manual CPC, target, return on ad spend, and all kind of stuff in between. In today's video, I want to show you exactly what's the difference between manual bidding and automated bidding, as well as some examples when to use which bidding strategy, so that after this video, you will know exactly when to use them for your own campaigns, because ultimately choosing the right bidding strategy in the right situation can mean all the difference between a very profitable campaign that is generating a ton of sales for your business and one that is just not working that well. So let's jump right to the computer and get started. Alright, so let's discuss which bidding strategy type to use. Then a little bit later in the video, I will show you the right bidding strategy type for the different stages of your business, which I think will be very, very helpful. And in the end, I will end this video with some very important notes and tips on those two bidding strategy types in general. Let's start with the fact that manual bidding allows you to enter the auction directly. So if you use manual bidding, you tell Google, hey, I bid $1 on the search query, or I bid 50 cents, or I bid $2. So there's nothing that will be optimized or changed or whatever. You have to understand that bidding and bidding strategies are essentially just, sometimes a very complicated way of telling Google how much you want to spend or bid on each and every click. Nothing more than that, right? Bidding strategies are not some magical thing that suddenly make your campaign perform better. In the same way, auto bidding sets bids indirectly working towards a specific goal. So with auto bidding, let's say for example, target return on ad spend, you tell Google, hey, please set my bids in a way that allows me to get to a 300% return on ad spend, and please use them as efficiently and effectively as possible. So when you think something will result in a conversion that will meet my ROAS goals overall, then please do so. So it's very, very complicated what's happening behind the scenes, but the theory or how it works is actually very, very simple. They simply set bids for you in each and every situation to meet your overall goals. Now I want to show you in which stage of your business, which bidding strategy type makes the most sense. And in the beginning, we have the early stage, and the early stage is less than 50 conversions a month. Now, ideally, we talk about conversions on a campaign level, right? So when a campaign has less than 50 conversions, that's what this is mainly about, because the main optimization in Google Ads takes place on the campaign level. However, if if it takes a while for you to have like 50 conversions or more in multiple campaigns, it's better to have them in the account than to not have them at all. So if you have an account with 10,000 conversions and they are all similar in terms of, they being like sales, for example, right? Then Google still has much more data, of course, than if you have no conversions. So yes, on the campaign level, conversions are most helpful because they share a set of products, a set of similar conversions, but on the account level, they are still very helpful. So in this case, less than 50 conversions per account. In this stage, you should focus on manual because you have the maximum amount of control, and auto bidding doesn't have data anyway. Guys, that's something that you have to understand. If you set other than maybe maximize clicks, which is an exception here, if you use any sort of conversion-oriented auto bidding strategy like target CPA, target ROAS, maximize conversions, it doesn't make any sense in the beginning because Google doesn't know what a conversion looks like for you, right? So without any data to train Google with, without any conversions to tell Google, hey, that's a conversion, please give me more of this, it doesn't make any sense to use these bidding strategies in the first place. So essentially, you start this whole process by telling Google, I know best what a typical customer looks like, and I know best what each product is worth, etc. So in case of shopping, you can bid more on expensive, high margin products. In case of search, you can bid more on highly, highly relevant keywords because, as I said in the beginning, Google doesn't know what a very good product is, and Google doesn't know what a very good keyword for your business is. So that's where you do it all manually. Then in the second stage or the medium stage, let's say you have more than 50 conversions, there is no real upper limit here, to be honest. But as soon as this is the case, you can use a mix. Because some campaigns do better on auto or at auto bidding, and you can start leveraging data. So as soon as you have 50 conversions or more, Google gets an idea of what a conversion looks like, right? So they use machine learning, they use artificial intelligence to then determine, okay, that's a conversion and this guy wants more of that. So they try to find a pattern there. They try to find the people that are most likely result into a conversion. They identify the search terms that are most likely to result in a conversion, etc., etc. So they basically take a lot of signals, and based on these signals, based on the bidding strategy, based on the amount of conversions, etc., etc., they will either give you sales ultimately or not, right? But the point is they will make adjustments to your bid. So using all these signals, they come to the conclusion that in this particular search query that someone is typing into Google, they should bid 50 cents, or they should bid $2, or maybe nothing at all. So using a mix is helpful here. What I mean with this is that if a campaign, so as soon as you have those conversions, if a campaign is not performing, which means it's in this case unprofitable for you, especially if it's very far away from profitable, then definitely see if auto bidding can do a better job for you, right? So whenever something is not really performing well, try to use auto bidding in that stage. If something is going well, if you are like above break even, if you're doing 300% return ad spend, 350, you should still collect more conversions. You should still continue to use manual CPC with enhanced CPC, for example, in this stage, but not switch over to target ROAS, for example, necessarily, unless you have, made a bunch of additional conversions. If you have one campaign that is getting all the conversions and it's getting it like 100, 150 or something, sure, you can still consider putting it into an auto bidding strategy, but not immediately after you hit 50 if the performance is like all right, because then it still makes sense to leave it run a little bit longer. You should only use, as I said, automated bidding at this stage if things are not going well and you want to try something different. And then we have the third stage, and this is the scaling stage, typically at like medium 5 figures a month, sometimes also early 5 figures, so like 15, 20K. And here you should generally focus more on auto, because auto bidding tends to outperform manual with sufficient data. You can still use manual with big keyword or product differences. So if you have one campaign where you know that a product is a bestseller and you want to give it a higher bid than others, then it still makes sense to use auto to reflect that. I mean, you could technically also create this for a custom campaign only for that product, but still this can make sense. Also, you can still use manual when there are big keyword differences. So when there are 10 different keywords in a campaign and you know that 2 of them are simply the best keywords for your business, it can still be useful to give them your own bid, or if you want to make massive device bid adjustments, etc. Generally, in this sort of scaling stage, I would say that typically when I work with businesses in the early, medium, or especially high 5 figures per month range, we are definitely using more than 50% auto bidding, normally more than 70% or something as well. Because at some point, definitely enhanced CPC. At this point, we never use manual without enhanced, but also a lot of target ROAS and some target CPA, some maximized conversion value depending on the context here. And also what's important here, run experiments for search regularly. So when you're in the scaling phase, you should always try at least to set a campaign on auto and see whether it works better than manual. Sometimes it may not be the case and you can change it back. So in this case, I recommend to switch from manual, for example, to target ROAS, let it run for a week, compare the performance. If it's much better, keep it. If it's much worse, revert it back. And if it's similar, you can just let it run a little bit longer and see if this may get better. Because, as I said, auto bidding tends to get better over time. So if it performs very similar to manual, then chances are that it will outperform manual in the near future. So this is very important to know, because the scaling stage is where bidding strategies make the biggest difference. In the early stage, it doesn't matter too much, even though manual is most useful here for sure. But in the scaling stage, you're leaving money on the table most of the time if you don't use any type of auto. I know that there are a lot of Google Ads managers who claim that manual is always the best thing. Honestly, after managing millions of dollars in Google ad spend and working with businesses in all niches, I can say that Google is at this point in time pretty good at auto bidding strategies. And sure, you still have to do a lot of stuff. You have to think about it strategically, pick the right products, pick the right campaigns, use the right bidding strategies in the first place, and know when to change them, all that kind of stuff. But they can be very effective at this stage. So now I want to just give you a quick overview on these different bidding strategies, just for those of you guys who don't really know which strategies there are. Before then, in the next step, as I said, finally, I will tell you some very important key aspects that you should absolutely keep in mind when you run your campaigns. On manual, it's very simple. We have manual CPC with enhanced CPC, right? Which is technically a mix of bidding and auto, because Google can adjust your manual CPC, but it gets very close to manual. And on the auto side, we have maximize clicks, just maximizing the clicks, which is the only bidding strategy that doesn't require conversion data, really. We have target CPA, where Google tries to hit a certain cost per acquisition for your conversions. We have target ROAS, which is actually kind of my favorite auto bidding strategy, where Google tries to meet your return ad spend goals. We have target impression share, where you can say, I want to receive 90% of the available impressions, especially when you know that something is working, or when you have a brand campaign where you want to reach like 100% target impression share, then it can be useful, but I'm really not using it very often. We have maximize conversions and maximize conversion value, which work in a very, very similar way. Obviously, conversion value tends to be more effective, because here it's more significant if you get a certain result than with conversions. And we have, what's important here, I forgot, manual CPC and target CPA and target ROAS are the ones that I'm using the most. So as I said, target ROAS is probably my favorite auto bidding strategy, followed by target CPA, which only really makes sense though if you have products with very similar pricing in the same campaign, or if you're trying to get leads or something, right? If you're trying to get newsletter signups or general kind of leads or contact form submissions, then it makes sense to use target CPA, because there is no direct return on this. But if you for example, if you sell 100 products, or if you advertise a collection in a search campaign, using target CPA is not really smart, as ROAS is way more meaningful. On the other hand, manual CPC obviously is something that I still use all the time, especially because it's the most important and the most useful one when starting. Ultimately now, as I promised, some final important notes on bidding strategies for Google Ads in the first place. First of all, bidding strategies are crucial, but in the beginning, your ad and landing page quality is more important. And this is really, that's just really important, because I see so many people that are sitting there and they say, I didn't make my first sale. It's probably because of the bidding strategy. No, that's not the case. If you are struggling to get to like 1, 5, 10 sales a day, this is usually because you don't get the right people with the right ad to the right landing page, right? So it's a mix of keyword, ad, and landing page. Ad can be a shopping ad or a search ad. Keyword is very obvious, or a search term in case of shopping then also. And the landing page, so how are you actually selling the products? Things like the price, the images. If you are really struggling to take your business off the ground in the first place, making your first few sales, I can guarantee that in 99.9% of the cases, it's not the bidding strategy, and you shouldn't worry about it. Simply put it on manual and that's it. Then don't change bidding strategies too often, because it's a major campaign change that kind of messes with the optimization. So I'm not saying that this will destroy your optimization or something. That's something that is always a myth out there. Changing a bidding strategy will massively hurt your campaigns. That's not true. But yes, it is true that if you do this daily, Google will always have to re-optimize, readjust, and it doesn't make sense to do that. So only change bidding strategies when there is some thought behind it, like when you want to make a non-profitable campaign more profitable, when you want to scale, but not just out of nowhere, right? I know that there is a lot of gut feeling involved. You have to get better at it. In my case, I do a lot of gut feeling with these campaigns simply because of the thousands of campaigns that I've managed, but just don't do this too often, guys. Never change a winning team, aka bidding strategy. So if you are having a bidding strategy, a campaign with 600% ad spend, doing good volume, don't be greedy and try to switch the bidding strategy to get 700%, because what's more likely is that the performance will drop. So only change a bidding strategy if you feel like you could really scale, or if you feel like you could get more profitable, because right now it's not doing that well. But if it's getting good results, you should rather try something new, something different, than messing with the original campaign. Now, the exception here is an experiment if you use Google Search Ads, because then you can run an experiment, you can split the traffic, and you can try to further improve a winning campaign. With shopping, that's not really possible, or just indirectly with priorities. That's a little bit tricky, so don't do that. And last but not least, before killing a campaign, it is normally useful to try one last bidding strategy change. So if you have a campaign that is not really performing, before you kill it forever, I recommend to make a drastic bidding strategy change. If you have run it on manual CPC and you are not breaking even or barely breaking even, and it has been running for some weeks, and you say, okay, that's enough, try to switch to target ROAS, for example, let it run for another week or at least a few days, see if there is any change, because that's a massive campaign change you're doing there. Very often, or in quite a bunch of cases, I was able to recover a campaign that I thought was dead in the first place now. And by making this change, I then, squeezed some more money out of this campaign. That's something that can be very useful for you. So please consider that. That's a very bold move when it comes to a campaign. So that's something that can really recover your campaign if things are not going that great. Yeah, so I hope this wasn't too overwhelming, or I hope that it wasn't too theoretical at the same time, because bidding strategies, as I said now, are a very tough mix between things that you need to know, theory, and at the same time experience, right? So when I jump onto a new client's account, or when I work with people directly one-on-one, sometimes we make changes to a bidding strategy that I wouldn't have been able to explain them like in a video or in a course, because I see all the data, I see all the metrics, and I realize, hey, we should do this. And then in the end, it has a positive effect. So it's not always explainable. And sometimes you simply need to have the experience and the ad spend to know what's the best way to go about it. Of course, there are way more details to when to pick which bidding strategy, when to get started, how to test, etc. If you want me to help you with this personally, you can feel free to go to the link in the description where you can book a free clarity call with me, where we go over your Google Ads account or over your business, just to give you some ideas on what you're doing there and how you can improve, as well as how we might eventually work together fully one-on-one if you're in a position where I believe this actually makes sense. So these calls are now available again. I just redesigned the way I do that, so feel free to check the link in the description if you want me to personally help you with your Google Ads and take them to the next level. With this being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, please leave a like and please subscribe to this channel for more e-commerce and Google Ads content. And now I wish you lots of fun, lots of success in your business, and I hope that I will see you in the next video again. Bye-bye.